Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time. Welcome back to Downsizing Roadmap podcast. I'm Jody Roscoe.
I'm Heather Fisher.
And today we are going to talk about downsizing as a couple.
It's such an interesting one. We do our in-person downsizing workshops, and sometimes we have couples there, and oftentimes we have one person from the couple, and they say, "Oh, my wife needs to come, my husband needs to come," but they couldn't get them to come.
Or they come, one of them has their arms crossed, and one of them doesn't.
The stance.
Yes. And one of them is saying they have so much junk, and the other one's saying, stop calling it junk.
Right. Right. So we find a lot of mismatch, which I think in life, this is not new.
Right. Opposites attract.
You marry someone that is likely fairly different, and that's why you love them so much.
Right.
So that's the key. Remember, this is why you love them so much, because opposites attract.
Right.
But when it comes down to some of these tasks, we often see the two people on opposite ends of the spectrum, the collector and the thrower-outer, are married to each other.
Very, very often.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I'm the thrower-outer in my marriage.
I'm definitely the collector.
Yes. It's the same as in our, our working relationship. You're the stuffer, and yes.
Although I'm getting better and better about letting things go, like much better. So
yes,
I think we'll get into it more, but I genuinely think it's very based in your childhood and what you learned and what your values were and what they were taught to you as. And so I think that all of this surface bickering is really actually some pretty deep stuff that you need to get through.
Absolutely. And the stuff that you love, you're not loving it most likely for what it is. It's for your own story around it.
Yeah.
Or your own experiences, maybe something you didn't have, you didn't have enough of earlier in life, or, all of those things.
Yeah,
come
it's much
to a head.
bigger.
Yeah.
They're much bigger than whether, we keep this one thing or not.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll dive into that today on this episode, and how to get on the same page.
Yeah.
Because that's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
So first step is what it always is. You have to start talking about what the end game is. What's the plan? What's the dream?
And make sure you have the same plan, which that's a whole nother piece. Do you often we get somebody wants to stay in the house and somebody doesn't.
Yeah.
So so how are you going to work through that and the pros and cons of that, and having, some pretty deep conversations about what your future is going to look like. And
talking about why someone is struggling with the current situation, or, maybe finding some resources to make the current situation work for a little longer, but by easing those burdens that one person might be feeling that the other one isn't, because people are at different health levels, mobility levels, emotional attachment to that place, and ready to move forward on different timelines. So just talking through all of that and why different things are important to each person is what we're going to talk about. So then the stuff can just be stuff, and you can move through that a little easier.
Yeah, maybe it's one person's job to take care of all the things, and the other person thinks it's fine to stay, and the one that's job's to take care of it all is like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And looking at, objectively, I think we talk a lot about that, but kind of getting a bird's eye view, whether it's of your stuff and your house, or whether it's of your situation and your future. But we very rarely in life, we just kind of go along day to day, and we don't stop and just take a bird's eye view of all of that stuff. And so that's number one. What is each of your views, right?
Yeah.
And then how are we going to come together for a combined joint view?
Yeah. And just talking through, what the other person is hoping for. If it's just a little bickering about, you need to get rid of your stuff, and the actual reason why you're scared of change, or you don't know what's coming, or you're suffering through something, if you're only saying those words of go clean out the garage, go, your sewing room is overloaded, those words aren't being productive to get you both on the same page.
Well, they're not the problem.
Right.
And so you need to get down to the root of that. And, you might have to ask a few questions deep. Why are you, why are you wanting to keep this thing or these things? And then what's that going to mean if you don't have them? Asking yourself some kind of hard questions, actually.
Yeah, we pulled a list of some questions that can start this conversation if you're not sure how to start it. But before we dive into the questions, I would say you could do it one of two ways. You could just talk about the questions together in conversation. But if you're struggling with that, and that's not working very well, you could do it on paper, each of you separately, the same questions, and then come back after you've had time to process it yourself. But I would say don't do it in the middle of a stressful situation.
Yeah.
This is something to do, prepare the other person that you want to have a conversation about that. If you're the one instigating it, don't throw it on someone when they're in the middle of doing something else. And just like any hard conversation, don't throw it in at that inopportune time, because the results will not be what you're hoping for, and it won't move things forward.
Right. Pushing too hard or at the wrong time doesn't usually get you where you want to be.
Or unexpected, where the other person hasn't had a chance to think through it for themselves.
Well, yeah, because if you have been thinking about that silently for, 6 months or a year, and then you have this whole plan in your head because you've been thinking about it for so long, and then you're like, hey, we need to do this and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, wait, what? They haven't had a chance to think about it. So I think giving them that place.
That space to think it through as well and come back with some answers can be beneficial. So do we want to go through these questions? I think some of them can really get the conversation moving.
Yeah. So I was just looking at the stat from before. 64% of couples, one person is more emotionally attached to their belongings than the other, and I would think it would be more than 64%.
Yeah,
but that's interesting. But definitely, I think there are people who get really emotionally attached to things and people who really don't. So, okay, the questions. So, questions to ask each other. I'm just going to kind of go down the list.
Yeah.
What do you want the next chapter of your life to look like? And that's a big question. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And you can just be really dreamy about it and just write down any crazy thing, just, any big thing, anything.
Yeah.
Just really write that, just really think about a big picture of what your next chapter could look like.
Yeah, I think that sometimes one person, like you said, could have been thinking about something for months and months in their head, and it's not even that the other person objects to that plan. It never occurred to them.
Right.
Like, life is good.
Right.
It's the way it's always been, and it never occurred. But if moving closer to your kids and grandkids is, what you're wanting to do, and, you have to talk about those things, not just hold resentment that they haven't happened.
Right. Right. So this is what I see it looking like. What do you see it looking like? And how can we, come together on that? What scares you most about downsizing? And that can be definitely different from different people, but fears can absolutely stop you from living your future. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how can you walk through those fears and get to the other side of whatever that is?
Yeah. And I think the fears can dissipate when you have that plan of what downsizing means for you as a couple or as a person.
Yeah.
the fears dissipate because it's not just this word and you suddenly think you own nothing and you're in a 10 by 10 room. And
I mean, well, let's take the example of you're going to go move closer to your kids, right? So now that's not a place that you've been in all these times. Well, who's going to be your doctor? Who's going to cut your hair? You can spin out on those kind of things and get really freaked out about what that is. Or you can be like, I just really want to be in my grandkids' life and go to their games and be there for their birthday, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And let's start exploring next time we go visit.
Yeah, right. Let's start seeing what that looks like. So, okay, here's another question. What are you most excited about what are you most excited for about simplifying or moving? So what is most, really basically the question is, what do you hate about your house, or what do you hate that you're doing? Or what are you most excited about not having to do?
I hate dusting all of this stuff and shuffling papers. And
those flower beds that I used to love, I just can't get in there and do it anymore. Even though I love them, I can't do it. And then I feel terrible that they don't look as good as they used to. Or whatever that is, what is it that you're going to be like, oh, this is going to be amazing when I don't have to fill in the blank?
Yeah. Motivation.
What items are must keeps for you and why?
Yeah. I think that question is so important because if it's somebody else's stuff and it doesn't hold that same significance for whatever reason, it's easy to say we can get rid of this. We often have couples at our class that are like, everything we're getting rid of is his stuff, and then that'll be plenty of room for mine.
We're
and they say it in jest, but I think there's a bit of that in all of us. Well, if they got rid of 90% of their stuff, that leaves plenty of room for mine.
So what's that compromise? I can get rid of this, and this, and you can get rid of this, and this, and that leaves room for my favorite thing and your favorite thing,
And an understanding of why it's important to the other person. And I think once you've had to define that on paper or in conversation, why it's important, you realize, is it truly important? Wait, I want to pick something different. This is a silly reason to keep it. So you're narrowing it down. But then once you've decided that these are the must keeps, and I'm not going to, nag you about getting rid of that because that's the decided upon, that takes a little bit of the, obstacle out of that constant bickering about, well, if I'm getting rid of this, you have to get rid of that kind of a thing. You can narrow down on a few of those protected things that this is important to me for this reason, and it's a must keep, and just respect that importance to the other person, not have to have the same feeling around whatever it is.
Well, and the answer for both of you can't be everything.
Right.
So it can't be you have to go into that must keeps with the understanding that this is the really critical stuff, right? If there's 300,000 items in your house, what 100 things are really important to you, or 50 things are really important to you that you really have to have.
Yeah.
We get so many people whose houses still have all the stuff from their mom and dad or whatever that they got dumped on when they had to clean out their house and didn't have the time or didn't have the emotional, bandwidth to go through it, and never did. Tons of people who have that whole pile of things. And tons of people who have all their kids' things, who their kids moved out, and their kids don't want to take those things, and their parents are keeping them for them, quote unquote, keeping them for the kids, and the kids either need to come and get them or they need to go, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that's neither of your must keeps because they're not even yours.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah. Always start with the easier things.
How do you imagine spending time in your next home?
I think that's an important thing because that also will define what you want to keep.
And what that looks like. Are you in a ranch home with a smaller yard and you're still, mowing and taking care of it, and you can do a little bit of gardening because you love that? Are you in a condo where you just don't want to deal with it and you can leave, whenever you want to and go travel and it's not going to matter? Are you in a community where there's tons of people and you want to be hanging out and playing bingo and doing all the things? What does it look like?
Yeah. And what hobbies are you taking with you, and what can you let go that you're not going back to? That
you need room
and
for.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. How can you divide the downsizing work fairly?
I think this might be a challenging question to get to an answer on at the beginning, especially if one person came to this downsizing party reluctantly.
Yeah.
But it will make everything going forward so much easier if you know what that end goal is. You have at least a broad timeline of, we hope for this to happen in the next 6 months, in the next 2 years, in the future. You have that timeline, then you can look at what those projects are and divide them up and give, some space for them to get done.
When I was thinking about this question and I kind of just put it to me, I was thinking, okay, most of the stuff, some of it's mine, but most of the stuff in the garage is Mark's stuff that he could deal with and handle.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff in the basement is like stuff that I would need to handle. And there's tons of like holiday things and, just stuff that he wouldn't know how to manage or get rid of. And in fairness, I do honestly think it won't be equal because the thrower-outer just doesn't have as much stuff as
I'm done here.
As the keeper. And I'm telling you, the keeper does not really want the thrower-outer always to be helping with that
hovering
project. Yeah. Why do you need that? Why do you need that? Why do you need that? Right? You don't want to. That's not a productive thing. So if it might take more time for the keeper to go through their things than the thrower-outer, and you're going to have to talk about what that time is going to look like. But, you can still say, you can do the garage and I'll do the basement. And that time may not be the same and equal, you know what I'm saying?
But I think giving a definition of, we will have both of those projects done by such and such, gives you the freedom to fit it in your own way, your own time, take off chunks that you can handle of the piece you're responsible for without, sometimes a full weekend of togetherness, going through rooms or basements or attics or whatever. That is not going to lead to as much success as sometimes dividing, doing it, revisiting, and then celebrating that both places are done.
Right. And to be supportive of what that looks like, right? So,
and any progress is progress. So I do think if you're the overachiever of the duo, you have to, the same with if your kids are learning how to do their own laundry or clean something, you have to let your expectations be that done, not perfect, or done, but not your way.
Right.
That if progress is made, that is something to celebrate, and that is a win. It's not, I would have, fill in the blank, whatever, differently.
Just thrown out that whole room in an hour and I would have been done, or whatever.
Yeah. So as long as the other person is meeting that expectation of making progress by a deadline, then that's all we need for it to be a win.
So that rolls right into the question of what support do we need? Do we need family, professionals, some kind of emotional support? There are definitely third-party people that can help you, people that can, organizers and people that can help with downsizing like that can come in and help you, or your best friend who's a thrower-outer who can come in and, talk you through that and maybe have a little bit less emotional, ties to those things. So a different lens that they're looking through.
I think I love that it's where it is on this list of questions too, because pulling in that third-party resource when you've already defined what are the must-keeps for each person. So like you can feel safe in that, okay,
Yep.
I know that you don't want to tackle going through all of these rooms. I would like to have, so-and-so do that. Here's what that looks like, and being supportive of investing in those resources if you don't want to be doing it yourself, and having gone through what the end plan is, what you're working towards, and what is already defined as, okay, you're not going to go into the garage and throw away all my stuff. I will
Right.
handle that, but yes, get some help for this, that, or the other. So
Yeah. How will we know when we're making progress, and how should we celebrate it? I love this. I love that you build in right up front. You're going to build in, okay, when we've done X, we're going to, celebrate. We're going to go out to dinner, or when we've done Y, we're going to whatever. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously defined by whatever feels celebratory to you, but definitely plan that from the get-go. And as we've said so many times, define what it is you're doing so that you know when you're done.
Yeah.
If it's just I just want to downsize.
Yeah, it's too big.
It's too big.
And overwhelming. And not just like any goals that, anybody that talks to you about how to create goals, they have to be measurable. They have to have a time frame,
written down.
Yeah, they have to be written down. So that's what you want to do. You want to write down what you're doing. You're getting almost making a little contract with each other about what your expectations are, each of your expectations, and how you're going to meet them, and then how you're going to celebrate yourselves around those.
Yeah, and I would say build in those celebrations along the way.
Not at the end.
Not at the end.
I mean, you can do it at the end too, but not wait till the end to celebrate.
Right. Celebrate, whether it's each week or whatever that is. You did the things, celebrate it, and have fun.
Yeah. Okay, so section 3 is divide and conquer. How to start when you're at different stages. We see this all the time too. We've talked about this. Somebody's ready and somebody isn't. So let each person handle their own categories. That's kind of what we've been talking about. Start with neutral or shared areas first. I mean, you could probably clean out the pantry together. There's probably not a lot of emotional, the food's expired or it's not expired.
Right.
All your spices are probably expired.
Right. That's a clean sweep. Just put it all in the trash bag. They're all expired.
But there are some areas that, aren't going to be confrontation, or, there won't be much friction over those. So you can start with those together, or you can, assign each yourselves, certain areas that are like that, either one.
Yeah.
Create shared wins and choose one goal that you both want. So we've talked about that. We kind of talked about that when we were talking about the questions, but make sure that you are on the same page. I guess that's what we're saying in all of that. Just be on the same page, respecting your each other's pace, and
Yeah, and each other's emotions around it. If you're feeling like you're just struggling to get on the same page, it really probably means going deeper on the questions and figuring out, because like you said at the beginning, it's rarely about whatever trinket you're, maybe bickering about, but something is a bigger fear or attachment. There's a bigger emotion.
Yeah.
So give the other person grace to express where they're coming from and ask those questions to get to that.
Yeah.
And then you can likely move past it once you have that understanding amongst each other.
Yeah. If somebody's really throwing up a wall around something, there's a deeper piece to it, because stuff is just stuff. When it really gets right down to it, stuff is just stuff. Yeah. And so what is making them want to hold on to it? And that's really what you want to get down to.
How can you respect that? I think, too, we've talked so much about decision fatigue, and make sure to recognize that if you are working on something together. When we talk about that 10-minute-a-day challenge, some days 10 minutes is all you can do, and some days you're on a roll. Just be aware that the day you're on a roll, the other person might be in that, 10 minutes is the worst 10 minutes of my life.
Right.
And so figuring out how to balance that, either continue on your role, on your own for that day, or be willing to stop and regroup. But don't expect someone's energy level to match your own every
and get
day.
like quietly frustrated with them that I'm still going and they're not going anymore. And, the 10 minutes is the win, period.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're still going because you got on a roll, great. But I'll bet tomorrow you won't be feeling like you're on a roll. Tomorrow you might be feeling that decision fatigue, and your 10 minutes is plenty the next day. Or maybe you've created some momentum and you're just ready to, plow through it. But if they haven't gotten to that place, again, their 10 minutes is their win. Let them have it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Revisit it. Don't hold those different energy levels against someone else each day. It will balance out, and you might be surprised then they see your wins and go, oh, while you were
time for me to get out
while
in the
you were
garage.
gone, I cleaned out this and
Yeah.
this, and it'll surprise you. So just be patient.
Yeah, set timelines that allow that breathing room. So when you're setting the timeline, like we were talking about, the thrower-outer's timeline might be able to be faster than the keeper's timeline, but that's not fair, right? Like
Right.
set a timeline that will work for both of you and make that reasonable, that the keeper can go through all the things too.
Yeah. I like this quote. I don't have who to attribute it to, so I'm sorry whoever said this wonderful thing, but it says different doesn't mean wrong, it just means different. So that's back to when you set those expectations up front, you can both get to the end of the road without taking the same route. So as long as you're both moving forward and you've talked about what a winning plan for you both is and decided on those expectations, someone doesn't have to do it exactly your way, as long as they're
I
moving
think
forward.
all fights in all relationships, or all things that don't seem to go quite right, is because of expectations that are not spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has an expectation, has not told the other person what their expectation is, and is mad at them for not meeting that expectation, even though that other person has no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that happens, when we're feeling like we don't have great customer service somewhere, it's because we had an expectation that wasn't met, even though that person, might not have known what our expectation is and that they're supposed to be living up to it. But in our relationship, especially with our spouse, I feel like when you are in trouble, because there's expectations that somebody didn't verbalize, and the other person didn't agree to be held to.
Yeah.
And that's where we're in trouble. So that's why the upfront conversation is so important, is because you're going to air all those expectations. Like, I want it done in 6 months. I don't think 6 months is reasonable. Whatever that is, you're going to get all those expectations out into the open and get them agreed upon one way or another. And then as we move forward, it's easier to give grace because we know what the expectations are.
Yeah, absolutely. So right there. Okay, so sometimes, despite all of these great plans, there's a little extra conflict
Friction.
and friction, emotional tension. So just a couple tips on getting through that. You still want your relationship to be amazing, and you want to not be frustrated each day. So we talked about this, but avoid decluttering and diving into this when emotions are high. So schedule things, schedule how long you're going to work on something, whether that's separately or together.
Mm-hmm.
Make that plan. Don't throw in at the last minute, like, I know you're watching this right now or doing your crossword, but I want to declutter the pantry right now. Don't just throw it in.
I might be a little guilty of that. Because I keep until I can't stand it, and then I want it gone. And I want everybody on board to get it gone with me. They're like, wait, it was fine.
Yes, well, we can all, do things in our own way.
We have opportunities for growth.
It's just different. It's not wrong.
Opportunities for growth.
Yeah. I think that the maybe box, or having a pause when you get into emotional items that you're ready to just throw it out already.
Yeah.
Take a pause. It is okay to just say, we're at that decision fatigue for today. We're at that limit. Let's set that over. If you still want to regroup and go back to something easy to finish up some more time, do that. But pulling back from those hot button items that you're arguing about, that's okay. Sometimes just a little time and that maybe and that thinking about it is all someone needs to make a hard decision on something.
Yeah, because I've seen where even myself, like if I go through something, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's just easy and I can just get rid of that. And then there's that medium stuff that I'm not sure. But if you go through it once and you just kind of get rid of the easy stuff, then if you go through it again the second time, you can get rid of more stuff because you can. It's like a mental thing. You can only get rid of so much at a time, and then you're just like, I'm getting rid of too much stuff. Yeah. Even if it's not stuff that you love, it's just too much stuff.
Yeah.
It's back to that mind thing where everything we own is more important than it actually is because we own it.
Yeah.
And so letting it go, whether we even want it or not, letting it go is still a thing in our minds. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have that thing anymore, even though I don't.
I mean, it's crazy how it all works. But I mean, I did downsize a few years ago from a larger house into a much smaller house. And I don't know the percentage of what I gave away, but I felt like I was donating, half of my house. And it was a significant amount. And I really can't picture what I gave away.
Right.
Like, I don't remember what it was, but it's been almost 5 years since I made that move. And I don't miss anything to the point of like, I wish I hadn't done that. But there are tinges like, I wonder what was in that pile. Like, if that still would have been a maybe pile, I probably would have dug stuff out, but I really don't miss it and can't name it or whatever.
So you don't really need it. It's just a mental thing. Like,
it's just a mental,
accepting that you have less.
Oh, I owned all that. What was it? And it's so silly because I don't need any of it. I don't even remember what it was.
I think it must be like a caveman kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, you better have all the things or you might not get things later or, whatever. But
yeah. So we get it. It is emotional,
yeah.
But, just move progress forward each day. No pressure, no judgment. If someone's just struggling in it, just, hey, let's just stop and have, a cup of coffee and sit on the porch, and that's okay. You can regroup again the next day.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, I think, more tips on how to if you disagree on how much you need to keep. So you're going to agree on it in advance back in the beginning. Agree in advance, like, we're going to have, 4 bins for Christmas or, whatever that is. We're going to have 1 holiday bin. I mean, I don't know, like, depends on how big the area is and what you're doing. But, do a volume kind of cap. Like, we can have 3 boxes of pictures, or we can have whatever that looks like. And so agree in the beginning. And so you're going to have to sort it down until it fits into whatever that volume cap it is. And that might take a few passes.
Yeah.
You might have 1 pass and you're like, oh, okay, we said 4 bins for holiday and I have, 7 bins for holiday. And after I, did my first, I used to have 12 bins for holiday, right?
Yeah.
And so now how am I going to get that 7 into 4, and what are my favorite things, and what things do I really not put out? I'm just pretending like I need them, and, those kind of things. So it might take a couple passes, but if you have a volume cap on it, just like hangers in your closet, right?
Yeah.
You only have X amount of hangers in your closet, and that's how many hanging clothes you can have.
Yeah.
And so if something has to go, if you don't have a hanger for it.
Yeah.
Just kind of a way that you can keep the volume cap on some of those things.
I think that what we've seen, I've seen personally, and what we've seen with couples that we've met in our classes or clients, is that back to that perceived monetary value of things. And so I think that is a great situation when that third party, that neutral third party, is a really great resource. Instead of an argument between a couple.
Like one person thinks it's got a bunch of value and the other person doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, well, we can't get rid of that. It has. I think that not having that argument and just, okay, let's find out. And then using third-party sources, an estate sale person, an auction person, an appraiser, whatever it might be, looking online at, doing that spreadsheet of value and deciding, let information be a deciding factor sometimes versus just an argument of,
yeah,
no, it doesn't. It's junk.
Right. Find the facts around it. Yeah. So let each person have a no questions asked pile. So that's back to like, why do you need that? Like some of it's just like, I need it. Like,
or I want it.
Yeah. I just, for whatever reason, I want that. And that pile may or may not end up being something that you really want. And that can't be the whole pile. Like it can't be everything, can't have that reason. But just, if your partner wants something that you don't want, you don't understand, it's okay. You don't have to always understand it. That's just something that is important to them. And they'll probably tell you the story around it at some point. Maybe not when you're, elbows deep in the day of going through things. But there is a story around it. There is some reason. So, but maybe we don't have to go through every reason as we're doing it. So use labels like it's a memory, or it's for future use, or it's display worthy, or whatever to frame your discussion about it.
Yeah.
Right. So why is that important? This is the memory that I have that this piece of, this stuff evokes.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to use this in the future. And then you're going to have to be really honest with yourself. If you haven't used it in the last 5 years, are you really going to use it in the future? So be honest with yourself about that, because I do think that's something that people use as a procrastinating, comment of
kicking the decision down the road.
Yeah. And display worthy, I think that is legitimate. Like, are you going to put that out and have it, have a place in your home that it is displayed so that you can look at it and have those memories? Or is it, it was mom's, but it's still going to go back in that box that was in the basement, and shove it in the storage room of the new place? Then, you aren't creating memories around that thing when it's in a box in the basement. Like, there's no connection to that thing.
And I think that goes back to the very beginning when you have that plan of what the next step looks like. You can make those decisions a little better. I mean, we just met with a client that was like, well, I can't make all these decisions on what I'm, donating and giving away because she was waiting on her new space. She hadn't seen her new space yet. So she's like, I'll be able to as soon as I see what that square footage and room layout looks like. Right. So if you don't have any kind of a plan on what that next step looks like, I think you keep more thinking, I'll need this in the future. I might need this.
Yeah. Create photo albums or digital backups of large collections of if you have a collection that you want to let go of, and you're going to just keep your favorite 1, 2, maybe 3 things of that collection, and you're going to let go of the rest, you can take pictures of the rest of it so that you can look back and remember on what that was, and then let that collection go to either family, or maybe it has some value, or maybe there's a great place that you can donate it to, that it's a club or something that really enjoys whatever that is, puzzles or trains or whatever that looks like. And, maybe there's somewhere great that you can give it, but you can have pictures of it in the meantime so you know what you had, and maybe keep your favorite pieces.
Yeah. So the next topic we want to talk about is sometimes in the couple situation, they're at this point of downsizing because one person is in a different declining health or mobility, and a lot of times memory care is involved in that. And so you've got a couple that's had a wonderful life together, but one person is handling the decisions for both people. So that changes a lot of these conversations that you're respecting what you hope the other person's hopes and wishes are, but you're not necessarily going to try to get down to answers on all of these questions from someone that's in the middle of another crisis and dealing with so much. So talking about some tips, if you're the one, I mean, it's a difficult place, and we're very understanding because if that's the situation, you're likely carrying a lot of the burden of their day-to-day care or safety. You're in that caregiver role. And then on top of that, to make the caregiver role easier in the future, you may be making a move, but you're adding all of the pieces of that move on top of an already day-to-day stressful situation. So in that case, it is definitely a great choice to pull in resources and just spend the money that those might cost and take that burden off of yourself, because I mean, kudos to all the caregivers out there. It is a hard job to be the caregiver of someone else full time that needs that, and there are so many resources that can handle a lot of this. And they can be there to bounce the conversation off of with you as to what's important to your legacy as a couple and what you want to keep, but they can do the sorting and the physical labor and handle that. So that would be my biggest suggestion, is don't try to have these conversations if the other person is not in a place that it's an equal conversation anymore, and pull in those third-party resources.
Prioritize safety, dignity, ease, keep what serves your current and your future lifestyle, and let the rest of it go. And wherever possible, involve you can involve them, but not in a way that makes that, like, a lot of times, especially people if they're having memory issues, that they get upset about it. And so unfortunately, again, it's just a hard position to be in as the caregiver and the one that has to handle it. But there's going to have to be a little bit of doing it around the other person.
I think that there was a phrase they used at the caregiver seminar we were at, and it was, I can't think of the word, but it was about a caring fib. It was a different word. But sometimes you don't have to give the full question or explanation. And so maybe you can give decisions in that this or that question. Hey, do you love this or that? And the person is choosing, but you don't have to finish with because whichever one you don't pick, we're taken to the donation pile. It can just be questions to get some of those answers you want without a full story that's going to confuse someone and make it harder.
If you don't have the budget to hire someone, then find some good friends. Maybe your family can help you, and see if you can get some help in that way, so you just get some support for yourself as you're moving through it, because it's definitely a tough place to be. And give yourself some grace. This version of downsizing is probably the hardest because you're not doing it alone. There's still going to be a lot of opinions from your partner, but they are also not truly there in the helping process. So, the National Alliance of Caregiving says 1 in 4 family caregivers have said they've had to manage the downsizing by themselves. But not really by yourself, because that person's still there. You're just, having to gently move around it. So give yourself some grace. Consider what systems you're going to need in the future to help yourself. Give yourself a break, and
give yourself a hug for all of the amazing things you're doing to take care of that family member. So back to celebrating. If you've gotten through this and you've gotten to that next place, or you've just gotten ready to go to that next place, don't forget to stop. Give yourself breaks. Give yourself a night out to dinner. Toast
to yourself, or have coffee, or do something that makes you feel great about it.
Yeah, and be generous with praise of the other half of your couple that worked just as hard, even if it was in a different way than yours.
Yeah.
Give that praise and gratitude, and
keep coming back to that big why.
Yeah.
Keep, as you go along, keep looking at that and reminding yourselves as you celebrate each time, hey, we're that much closer to moving to our kids, or hey, we're that much closer to not having to mow that lawn ever again, or whatever that is.
Absolutely. So, I think that covered most of it for today. We'll be back with more episodes here in the next coming weeks. And if you need any resources, www.downsizingroadmap.com, and you can get through this together.
Yep. Good luck.
Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.